Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. It's Tech Talk time. So weekly podcast where we go through the comments of the last one and then kind of, have a bit of fun. It's been a pretty busy week. Obviously, we had the update stuff and then also we've had like various little events, but the main thing's just been like a bug fix week, right? Like trying to get things sorted, which is not always the easiest thing to do. It's not always, the thing that kind of speaks to people, but I think it's important so the game actually runs well. The simple fact is there's been a lot of things over the last like period of time where there's been a lot of things over the past period of time that needed to be fixed, and the fact that they're getting there is pretty good. So hopefully they can continue. Today in the Tech Talk, we're going to go through the comments of the last one. So if you want to be featured in a Tech Talk or chat or an idea gone through, make sure to leave it in the comments section of this one. And then also at the same time, it's my birthday on Saturday, so I'm recording this on Friday. This comes out on Sunday, so tomorrow technically is my birthday, but if you're watching on Sunday, then it's yesterday. So if you see a little bit less of a few things from me, it's gonna be because of that. The other thing is next week I'm going on holiday for a few days. We're gonna get away, have a look at a few areas, and have a bit of fun. So, if once again I have some stuff scheduled, not a ton of stuff, just a few things here and there, just to kind of have a look at things. But streaming wise and stuff like that, won't be doing a lot the first part of the week. So just to kind of let you know, and let's basically get started. Let's go through the comments of the last one, have a bit of fun, and have a good time. So the first one is obviously from Maxwell, and did the timestamps once again, which is very, very kind of him. What I'm learning nowadays about certain things on the internet is uh, they're making it harder and harder to gift people stuff from different regions. So, for example, in Canada now, I can't actually gift certain things to a lot of regions, and it's really bloody annoying. So hopefully they kind of, fix that. It's not very fun not being able to do it. So yeah, hopefully the Canadian economy gets better so I can start doing it. But at the end of the day, thank you, Maxwell, and thank you to everybody who does that. It's always quite nice to do. Then we have Noah. Oh my god, how the hell do you say that? No, so nothing. Noah knows nothing. Noah knows nothing. A good start. I'm feeling a bit fatigued, proceeds to soil himself live. I can honestly say I've never soiled myself live. I have showed my derriere a few times. I think the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done when streaming was when I chugged, like, we were watching Badlands Chugs, and this was like a few years ago. We were watching Badlands Chugs, and I was like, I bet you I could chug like a liter bottle of water or 2 liters, or it might have been like Diet Coke or something. And the problem is, I ended up chugging it, which was quite nice. But like the half an hour to an hour after, I must have pissed like I don't even know, like 10 times. My bladder was working overtime with that, and that was actually the most uncomfortable thing. Just constantly, just like everything going into overdrive. So that was pretty fun. But nah, I don't think I've ever done anything like that. There was a time, not last summer or maybe the summer before, but the summer before that where it was really warm out. Like it was maybe I think it was like 40, 43 degrees was the highest it got. But that was incredibly uncomfortable. And what ended up happening was I was like sweating so much like while streaming because I didn't have like air conditioning or anything like that set up because I was in like a different apartment for a little bit. It was during the pandemic stuff. And oh god, what I ended up having to do was I ended up like basically just getting stuck to my chair. And it was just awful, man. Like it was like my thighs were like super red, and that was a really really rough week. Like that was a tough one, but we got through it, as you do. So it's just how it is at the end of the day. Streaming is the easiest job in the world at the end of the day, and making content is also one of the easiest things. But the funny thing is, you get yourself in some weird situations, which is quite fun. So then we have King James. You generally get bad dispersion in naval because your ship is angled and your guns are spaced out along the length of it. Okay, I don't know why that would lead to bad dispersion. Like the reason why the dispersion is bad in War Thunder is because it's coded to be bad compared to other stuff. So in real life, maybe, but I mean, in real life, you have so many different things trying to make your guns accurate. Whether it's all of the rangefinders, the radars, everything like that. But yeah, in War Thunder itself, it's just coded into the game, and it's very, very annoying. There was actually somebody who sent me a ping about that stuff, so I probably think it's probably best to clarify it. One of the things I was talking about in the last tech talk, I'll find who did it because they pinged me earlier in the week. So in the last tech talk, I talked about how I like to increase my crew skills because it improves reload and also reduces dispersion of the guns. And let's see, it was Paul. So just from Paul. Basically, what he took away from it, and maybe other people took away from it too, because I wasn't clear enough, was the fact that if you increase your crew skills, it'll lower the dispersion of the guns you're using. That's not the case. What it does is it lowers the dispersion of the secondary guns, or the guns that your AI are using. So if you basically select your secondary guns and then tell the AI to use the primaries, or tell the AI to use the AA guns, the accuracy will reduce dispersion. So that's what I was talking about when it comes to the dispersion, like decrease. This helps if you're, basically trying to do something like use a hydroplane or use like secondaries. It means that your guns will be more accurate. And any way, in my opinion, to actually reduce that in naval, since it's the most annoying part of naval, should be done. And that's basically how you do it. So and then the other part, obviously, reload speed makes it easier because, you don't have to. You get more shots off per time, so therefore more guns, therefore more shells, therefore easier to actually hit targets. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The survivability stuff is fair. It's one of those things that should be focused on, but I don't find that annoying in the game. If I take damage and die, that's fine. The problem I have with naval is if I shoot and my guns don't hit, even though I'm, being as accurate as possible, I want to try and reduce that as much as possible because it's so annoying. And by experting crews and also by increasing those crew skills, it reduces that issue, basically. Right. So, next one. But yeah, the trying to be very careful when it comes to War Thunder and trying to apply it to real life, because of course War Thunder is made in a realistic way, and it takes into account stuff such as historical, documentation and all of this stuff. But the reason why the game, like the guns work like they do in the game, is because they're coded like that. So, like, just understand it. It's just one of those things. So then we have Colander. The reason that smaller team sizes would create a bigger burden on the servers is because depending on how it's set up, each. Right, okay, well, I'm just going to highlight that. Each individual lobby takes some amount of space on the server. Less players per game means more games, and more games mean more server use. Right, so this is the key thing, right? Right here. We don't know how it's set up in terms of what they actually use. We know which server clusters they use, and at least right now, in terms of what they've added in, it doesn't seem to have made a difference. Like, at least for me, I'm not having any issues with servers. I don't know if other people have been having issues with them. But yeah, the fact is we don't know what the backend looks like in terms of that. I remember a few years ago when it came to War Thunder, there was some huge issues in terms of servers just dying or not working. And it was the NA servers for like a year. This was in like 2022 or 2021. What ended up happening is there was a how would I put it? There was a time in the day. So it was between like 5 p.m. PST and like 9 p.m. PST. So oh, did I leave it on there billions? Oops, sorry. I'll change it. Basically what ended up happening, I'll just switch it over quickly. What ended up happening with that setup was it meant from like 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. it would take ages to load into a game. No, the gameplay isn't pre-recorded. Look, here you go. I'm playing as we're going. The problem with that 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. slot was it took ages to load into games. A lot of the time, you wouldn't actually get into games because it just wouldn't let you. And at the same time, you had people pinging all over the place. It was a really, really poor time, which is why they actually expanded into a different area, into a different set of servers in North America to try and fix it. Like, and I knew that because of the fact that sometimes I get 80 ping, which is more East Coast, and then sometimes I get 50 ping, and that 50 ping is more central since I'm on the west side. So yeah, it wasn't really too surprising that what ended up happening there. They had to expand stuff and go crazy with it, and it worked because at least things are fixed. But with the changes that they've made, at least right now, and since we don't know how that side of the game works or how that side of the business works, then it's very hard to comment on, right? I understand the idea of if you have smaller games and there's still the same amount of people playing at the same time, therefore you need more battles. But at the same time, that might be less of a server load for them compared to having these larger 16v16 battles. And I would actually honestly say it is because of the fact that it took them so long to get to 16v16 in air. Remember that 16v16 in air is something that's actually pretty recent. It is something that they've targeted for a long time, and were able to do it in some of the other things, but they weren't able to do it in air for the longest. So obviously something had to change. But once again, these ideas are some that we can't really go through unless we actually talk to one of the engineers that deals with that end. And we can't, at least right now publicly. So it's not really worth discussing. The main thing at the moment is everything seems to be working. And if everything is working, then at least for me, I'm happy, and hopefully other people are happy. And they brought in this change. It's obviously bringing in, the smaller teams and stuff like that, and it seems to be working. So that's it, Yeah, the also other thing is there's this like kind of narrative that air is, or sorry, top tier is like the most played area of the game. This isn't really true. I know that's one of those things that people push out, but mid tiers are played way more than top tier. And that's just because that's where people generally grind to. Most players are free to play. That's where they end up. And the other thing as well is every time we've seen stuff in War Thunder, in terms of, what most popular vehicles have been at that time and all of these things from War Thunder themselves, it's always something like a T-34 or like a KV-1, which is like the most popular of that week. It may have changed from a few years ago, but we can't really speculate on what might happen and all that stuff. So, yeah. So then we have the Piotr 71. TEC. Just refer these people asking to discuss historical matchmaking to a video on this topic. If they have any other questions, they can contact Major. Well, I wish, man. I wish it was that easy. But usually people who push narratives don't read the other side or don't read anything. They usually just push a narrative and don't think about it. It's why goalpost shifting is one of those things that happens all the time. where it's like, okay, well, I watched this, but you didn't comment on this very specific thing here. Or, well, all the things that you commented, we can just, you know, put in their own box, and then we can push forward with other stuff. It's a never-ending thing at the end of the day. So it's just one of those things that goes in circles, and it's just how you go. So, you know, the idea, as I said, I don't think it was ever really a mainstream idea, but it was one of those that was brought up a lot over the years. And nowadays, after so many times where it's just kind of either been tried or failed, or just with the increasing amount of vehicles, with the increasing amount of like different parts of it, you know for a fact that it's going to end up with just even worse stuff, right? Like now we have like all of the strike aircraft that are in the game now, right? The ones with like the crazy missiles and stuff. If you have a look at when those things were were added or released, or even just like modifications, like the Su-27SM being like an early 2000s vehicle, right? It's just kind of nuts. Hey Sneaky, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. But yeah, it's one of those which it'll always be there in. It will always be there, kind of like in the background, but it's just kind of annoying. I wish that I wish we could at some point just like put it to bed, but no, nothing ever gets put to bed, especially when these ideas are pushed by some pretty hefty influencers who are just doing it for money. So then we have Jet Navigator. Server overhead is easily explainable. Each match uses X amount of resources, regardless of how many players. A smaller number of players per match require more server resources. That's true, but as talked about earlier, not everything is coded the same, and not everything works like that. So it's just one of those that we just don't know about, right? So it could be either way at the end of the day. Like, and I know it's kind of, you know, weird to think about, but put it like this, right? If you have 16 people in a match, which I think this is 12 versus 12, but you have more interactions going on at the same time, right? Whereas if you have 6v6, you have a lot less interactions. So it's just, yeah, it's one of those which I don't like commenting on because of the fact that we don't know how it fully works. We know how it works for other games. We know how it works when it comes to other types of servers. We don't know how it works for this one. So until we do know how it works, I don't like just making broad statements about things. One of the things for me that's very important, and for me, I'm all right with saying like I don't know, or you know I'm not sure about something, and this is one of those things I'm just not sure of because I don't think it's ever been brought up like by the Gaijin guys. You know, like it was a big effort for them to move plane matches from 12v12 to 16v16. And one of the things they brought up was they would have to expand the server stuff, right? So if that's the case, wouldn't that lead kind of, you know, opposite to this? But as I said, I don't know, and I'm not comfortable saying either way, right? I'd have to sit down with somebody who actually, you know, works in that area with Gaijin and, you know, sort it out. And maybe one day I will. But I mean, I doubt it because it's usually the back end stuff isn't really things that companies talk about, right? They usually talk about like the shiny things that are there, and not the front stuff. So yeah, simple as. I swear when I loaded up Water, I saw the flag stop on the Coastal Guard. Yeah, it's the camo. They have a Coast Guard camo in the Battle Pass, and those are changelog today. We'll have a look at it tomorrow. We'll see what's going on. Let's see. Alright. Here we go. And we have J. Chris. What do you think about the following changes for Naval? I'd like to put the frigates into the Blue Water Tree and enable coastal only mode for players who enjoy coastal more or spade them at the moment. Okay. Coastal people could use a switch to turn it on or off, like they do for night battles. I think this would help the higher coastals, because many of them aren't really that capable of fighting blue waters in the way that Navy works in War Thunder. I know the naval mode is the most difficult to balance for me. Fighting 5 destroyers and 4 coastals is really not fun, and because of all the premiums in the 4750 area, this sadly happens a lot. Yeah, the high tier of coastal is extremely unbalanced, but it isn't just unbalanced with like coastal versus blue water. It's also massively unbalanced coastal versus coastal. There are some vehicles in coastal which are extremely tanky compared to other ones, right? I don't think I have the banana decoration, Mr. Fish. So for example, stuff like the Orla, right? The Orla is a vehicle which is incredibly tanky, just like the Candid. Why? I can't tell you why. I've no idea why they're so tanky, but they tank so many hits compared to so many other things. Maybe it's something that's inbuilt with them. Maybe it's like their armor values or something like that. It's just kind of nuts to me that that's the case. I find it very weird. So for me, in terms of like, if you want to set it up, like switch them over, sure. Like I'd be fine with it. Adding frigates into the blue water tree. I mean, you can do that. Basically, that would just mean it's cheaper to grind through. The main thing that frigates need is they need their own spawn. Like they need a spawn which is in between the destroyer spawn and the standard PT boat spawn, because some of those guys are able to spawn like or spawn in like the destroyer area, and they just get clapped by destroyers. Other ones are insanely powerful, like the SKRs, but they should have gone up in BR a long time ago. I played them post nerf, by the way. Like the SKRs, still stupidly powerful, right? The only difference is now you can't hammer like for 5 minutes. You can only hammer for 3 minutes, but then you use your rockets and then you use all your other stuff, right? So for me, I think putting like a frigate line in the blue water tree would be fine. But I do like the idea of having the toggleable thing, so coastal only fights coastal. The only problem, as I said, is there are so many coastal machines which are really unbalanced, and they will just kind of rule the roost. Because that's what happened previously with stuff like the Jaguar and the PR206, right? Like those vehicles just rule the roost. They just hammer everything that's coastal. That's not very fun. But maybe if you had that switch, maybe if people picked it, then you could, have a bit more fun with it. There are a lot of BRs as well, which are a bit lower. So they do have, what's the word? They are a bit lower, so they do have, the ability to not face blue water stuff, but they do have the ability to face high tier coastal, and they're very, very powerful. So once again, it's just like kind of moving around that stuff. Like I started doing like that naval challenge today, or yesterday, sorry, the coastal challenge. Oh, was that the Ostwind? Oh, the Ostwind 2 shot me. But yeah, so I started doing that challenge, and what I found was pretty simple. A lot of coastal stuff was very hard to play because they just don't really fit in the meta of what's there, right? So it wasn't incredibly fun. Hopefully in the future it can get a bit easier. Sure, let's just add a toggle. Have you gotten the banana decoration? When I logged in, I got a decoration, not the decal. I don't think I did. I don't know when I logged in today though. No, I only got the boosters. I have the decal, I don't have the decorations, so I don't know. I don't really know how to get them. Then we have Frank Bradley. What's cracking, Tech? Not much. Got a haircut. Workouts have been going pretty good, and obviously having a little bit of a summer holiday next week will be fine. It'll be good. Good to get away and chill. Have a nice time with us. I wish War Thunder events had 2 event vehicles in them, and there would automatically be coupons. Additionally, the events consist of 10 stars, which take 2 days to get a star. This means that events would go on for 20 days, and you could get an additional 3 to 4 days to buy any missing stars. And then, when the event 100% ends, you'll have a week off until the next one. Please look at my template for down below, and what are your thoughts on this? Well, it's just basically, it's basically just a middle ground between the old events and the new events, right? Like that's basically it. Like what you've proposed. You basically just said what the old events are. So, step 1 would be crate with a booster. Step 2 would be crate with SL. Step 3, decal decoration. Step 4 with the Vidagia #1, a Spanish light tank for Italy. 5, alternate camo. 6, crate. 7, decal decoration. 8 would be the Matador, the Harrier. And then 9 would be the title. And then the 10 would be a 50% discount on the Centauro and a new loading screen. So yeah, well, I mean, obviously that event is better than the ones that we have, but the problem with it, right, is you've basically gone, okay, so from these events, I want to get more stuff out of them for the same grind, right? Now, who's going to say no to that? Like, as a consumer, you always want more stuff, right? Like, no matter what. So when this event rolls around, the next selection will be, okay, how about 3 vehicles, or how about an extra decal or whatever. But you have to get a balance between what the company's offering and what the consumer wants, because otherwise, what ends up happening is neither can prosper. So in your situation that you've created here, what ends up happening is they now lose value on all of those vehicles because they're easier to grind, so therefore they'll be cheaper on the gaijin market, therefore they won't make as much money. And secondly as well, they now have to create way more event vehicles because they're running these events way more often. And as we've seen with a bunch of the events, whether it be stuff like the Act 3, for example, or other ones, people complain about these vehicles because they're not as unique as they want them to be in their own heads. So you're going to run into this situation in a few years, which is what's happened with the Battle Pass, by the way, where you're just going to run out of vehicles to add in these events. There are... How many days are there in the year? How many weeks? 54, I think, right? 4 times 12, 12, 24, 36, 48, 48, is that right? Well, there's like, maybe there's 48 to 50 weeks in a year, okay? So, you're saying you need an event like this every 2 weeks, and then what, a week off, was it? Yeah, so every 3 weeks you have 2 event vehicles. So, let's say 52, right? 52 divided by 3, that's 17 and a bit, right? So, is it? Probably. My math's really bad right now. Yeah, it's 17 and a bit. So, you have 17... you need 17 events, right? So you need 34 event vehicles in a year, without even looking at battle passes, and without even looking at like actual updates either, right? So that's a lot. And you need a loading screen for each one, and you need to give discounts on top of it, and you need to create decals and decorations. That's a lot of money invested. And then at the end of it, you turn around and go, and you'll also make less money from it. Right? See, that's the issue right there. So from an individual perspective, right? From an event like that, this event would be great. But imagine doing that 12 times in a year. Or imagine doing that 13, 14, 15, 16 times in a year, coming up with new unique vehicles, coming up with all of these things, right? It's a lot of work. It's a crazy amount of work. And even back in the day, right, when we had as many event vehicles, right? So we had the 2 crafting events, then we had the summer and the winter event, and then we had the battle pass, right? Battle Pass was like 3 or 4 times a year, so that's 4 event vehicles. And then, out of all of those different ones, you had 16 event vehicles, right? Now, and then let's say 1 for anniversary. So at War Thunder's max, like, event setup, you had like 21 event vehicles a year. And you're asking for 34. And they've had to reduce the amount that they've done because of the fact that they've added so many and they're running out, as I said, of unique stuff and also things that are interesting. It's just not really feasible, you know? Hey Juan, nice to see you. If you look at the little birds pilots, the joysticks are kind of in their hands. So yeah, it's like, once again, as a consumer, we always want more things. We want more things for less time. But there has to be a balance. And I think right now with the events that they work, the balance is alright. You know, you get decent times off, you get obviously the events going around, and you get to pick and choose which events you want, right? There'll be some people in your event who just want the Matador and they don't care about the Videja. But now they have to grind both. Whereas what if you have two individual events, one a bit easier than the other, where you can get exactly the same stuff but at different periods of time, right? So yeah, it's just a balance. What's my favorite beer? Wald Top from England. I don't know if it still exists. If you can't get Wald Top, then Black Sheep is pretty good too. That's not too bad. Over here in Canada, my favorite beer. Don't know. There's some which are usable, but most beers over here are just a drink to get drunk. They don't really taste great. Most of the time, I just try and get some stuff from outer places. Like I'll get like a Kilkenny or something like that, like the good old Irish stuff. If we're like eating out at a place, that's usually what I focus on. Bud Light, yeah. Bud Light or Kokanee or Black Ice are just like, yeah, it's okay. I'm here to not enjoy the piss water. I am here to urinate and get hammered. Thank you very much. Alright, so then we have Jake the Tank Master. Oh, also there's Tank Fest going on this weekend, so if any of you are going, hopefully you have a good time. You know, Granville Island beer's good. It's all right. There's a lot of like microbreweries around here, so it's like very up and down. Like they love their IPA over here. Like they love it. Big fans. Yeah, everybody in their potting shed has either a bunch of ganja or a bunch of beer. Oh, buddy. Peace. Surprise. Gotta love that. Right, so next. I need to get out of here. Left this as a comment on the previous video. Oh my god, what is going on with this? Left as a comment on the previous video, but I'd say that there should be even a minuscule SLNRP bonus for defeating missiles through use of countermeasures. Terrain masking, notching, defending, etc. It'd help stock machines that aren't as competitive to get access to essential modifications that are a little bit faster. Of course, there'd have to be systems put into place to prevent rigging and so on. I only play tanks, so I'm not well versed on the state of high to rare, but what's your take on it? Hope you enjoy your break in July. Yeah, it'll be good, man. Like, we'll have a good time. I don't like the fact that they removed the mission score you would get from defensively flying. Because you used to get like a proximity score for being near enemies. And this basically meant that if you were engaged in a fight, you would get score, right? And that is important. I think overall that's one of those things which is super important for people, because there's a lot of times, especially at high tier, where the only score you'll get is when you die, and that's because sometimes it can be very hard to set up these things. You know, it can be pretty tough to get through the missions and actually do well, and that sucks. So, especially now with the Fox 3 stuff, but also many other things going on. So for me, bringing back something which actually incentivizes defensive play is a good idea. Whether it's the proximity thing, whether it's, as you said, some kind of like, you know, if a missile goes near you but you don't die to it, maybe you get like a little bit of score. Or if somebody like throws shots at you but you don't take any damage, maybe you get some kind of score from there. You know, in ground you have adamant, right? And you have stuff like that. In air you don't. In air you only have, you know, the air ground targets, if that's how you want to kind of grind stuff. But even then, that doesn't really work as well, especially at high tier, you know. Hey, Arclab, nice to see you. So some kind of thing to promote playing defensively should be there. The only problem with it is people abusing it through the use of AI. But that is a separate issue and should be dealt with, and it seems like they have dealt with it quite aggressively, which is quite good. So yeah. I haven't played the F-47 rod, but I have played all the other P-47s. So, yeah, for me, I'd want them to add something like that. I think it's important. Especially now that, especially high tier, a lot of it is about defense and trying to turn it into offense. But it's very hard to turn it into offense a lot of the time, which sucks. So, it's just how it is. Hey, Commander Farsight, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. Hopefully everything's alright. Let's go over here. Good morning, Matthew. Nice to see you. So we have Jerry. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are. I really don't like the fuel tank changes where they explode more often. Right, let's go here. Sorry, I just got to set up for this first. Because on these maps, we need to get into a line. Playing top tier ground often is kind of annoying. Because half the time I get penetrated. There we go. Half the time I get penetrated, I just explode. It just gives the person who shoots first an even bigger advantage. I think that Gaijin make it so instead of just blowing up, destroying fuel tanks causes a fire that will quickly spread if not extinguished. I mean, they talked about adding that, and I think they already did too as well, right? Or at least that was part of like the things that they voted on. Also, I feel bad for the J-35XS. It fights radar missiles like AIM-54s with no RWR, no chaff, and now no multipath. Yeah, it sucks. 11 O's and 11 O's, 10 7s, and 11 3s are in very rough times right now. Hopefully that gets fixed. Hopefully they start thinking about how to actually properly balance the good old F-14 specifically, because there isn't really anything else with RBR that's causing the issues. The J-35XS is still in a very positive position though. So I think I'm not really too worried about that one. But yeah, the fuel tanks blowing up thing is a bit odd. So, hey, Upon the Skittles, nice to see you. There's something weird with the way that there's somebody at Gaijin, or maybe a bunch of them, who are taking to heart the idea that there's a lot of people who, when they shoot targets, what ends up happening is they don't do enough damage, right? And because they don't do enough damage, what is essentially happening is they get annoyed and then they either leave or they don't want to play anymore, right? Which might be happening. Like, I know for a fact it's happened to me quite a lot. And especially with, like, spore liners and stuff like now, it's much harder to actually kind of survive in that setup, and it's very annoying. So I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to make shells more impactful, and I don't think they need to. Like, I really don't. Remember with the crew shock mechanic stuff? This was the same thing that they were doing with that, right? They were doing exactly the same idea, like where they were trying to make your shots do more damage when they just don't need to. Because if you place your shots correctly, then you are completely fine, right? I don't know. I don't know why this is such an issue. Sometimes you can get screwed by desync. That is true. If somebody has a bit of a different like ping to you, But that is something that affects everybody. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes they get lucky. And it sucks, but it's also a factor of online gaming. You can't fix that, you know? And the way you fix that is you go to LAN and you fight people on LAN. What do you think about adding ram tanks to the British tree? Yeah, sure, I'm down for it. Would be nice. So yeah, there is some kind of system where they're trying to get people to do more damage even from non-lethal hits. And I'm not a huge fan. I'm really not a huge fan of it, you know? I would prefer something else, you know? I'm not sure if I'm supposed to ask here, but what do you feel about the current state of top tier? My feelings are exactly the same as before the update. You know, the issue is, as always, top tier is a very unbalanced place, and unfortunately, it's very hard to modify vehicles, and modifications have way too much of a sway on whether you do well or not. Playing a fully spaded vehicle at top tier is basically playing the game on easy mode, and very easy to do everything, whereas most people who are, you know, trying to grind up to that point have to deal with a wall of fire before you're able or allowed to even have fun. And it sucks. It's been something which has been a problem since the dawn of War Thunder. It's got better because you don't have end of the line, you know, really terrible grinds anymore. But the grind is still poor, still tough, and should be sorted out and should be made easier. Whether they do that or not is obviously a very different story, because of, you know, the setup of the game, and they want people to use stuff. But yeah, it just kind of sucks. I wish it was a bit better. Yeah, a lot of it is, unfortunately, like sometimes it is a skill issue where people like shoot tanks and they just don't do any damage. Sometimes it's, as I said, you shoot a vehicle on the move exactly where you're supposed to shoot it, and what ends up happening is the vehicle for some reason is actually not where you shot it. It's off by like half a meter or like a very small amount. So where you shoot the vehicle on your screen does not line up where it gets hit on the other screen. Does that make sense, right? What do we consider top tier? Well, the top tier. So 13.0 to 12.0 in air, 11.7 to 10.7 in ground, right? But mainly 11.7 and 13.0 because that is the toppest tier, right? Whoop, missed it. Let's see. Sorry, just got to finish this run and get back to base. Yeah, you can't do much about that, but the problem is there's a lot of people who complain about that, right? So since there's a lot of people who complain about it, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to fix it, but there isn't a fix. So they're basically just, if you misplace a shot, you do more damage, and I don't think that should be how it is. So then we have Hannah Leah. Maybe you found ARB EC boring, but I found it far more enjoyable than the 10-minute team deathmatch we currently have in ARB. I personally think not having RBEC as a permanent mode is a negative thing to do. That's fine. It's my opinions on ARBEC are not based on my own feelings about it. ARBEC was a very easy way and a relaxed way of playing bombers, and also a relaxed way of kind of just wandering about and creating kind of a narrative while you're playing. And sometimes, from a historical point of view, that's actually very fun to, you know, kind of create a story around what you're doing. That's why Simulator, at least for me, is appealing sometimes, because it's like, okay, today we're going to do this, and we're going to have a bit of fun doing that over here, and it's going to be enjoyable. But the problem is, a lot of people see it as a grinding mode, and it was one of the easier ways to grind, and that's why people liked it. That's why when they brought it back, when they brought back ARB EC, the major complaint with it was, why did you change? Why did you change the amount of RP you could get from it? Because they actually normalized it down to a standard level, and there was a ton of people complaining about it. So yeah, it's just interesting to see that. So my personal thoughts on ARBEC are not even something that I bring up in the conversation, because there's not any point of it. It's like It's like seeing. Imagine you deal with like a set of 20 people at a business who all think something is correct and the way that they do something is correct. But you disagree with that in like little ways, right? So the narrative of the company is that that thing works and that's how you're going to continue to do it and that's how you will do it. But you can always voice little opinions here and there on how you think it could be improved and everything. But you can't just go straight up against it and be like, nah, this is crap, you need to do it like this way. Because you're going to get 20 people who just go after you. And you're just going to be out the door very quickly. The same analogy can be put towards this. My personal feelings, it doesn't really matter at all when it comes to RBEC. It's not about whether it's boring or not. I have plenty of time in the day. I could always play it if I felt like it. The problem is that other people didn't see it like that. And there are many, many examples of this. Most of the media around RBEC was that, right? And which is why it has stayed away, just like the historical matchmaking thing again. The narratives which are around it are completely different from the reality of what ended up happening. Now, as I said, they should bring it back on the weekends, just like they do Naval. Why not? Put it there. Simple as. Alright, here we go. So we have Maxwell. Hi TEC, I'm gonna answer your question, feel free to ask another if you feel like it. I play War Thunder because of multiple reasons. Neuron activation, I like tanks a lot. There was a time in my life where someone treated me very poorly, showed me the game. It's one of the good things I've gotten out of that friendship, and I know it just stuck with me. Oh, I get that. Yeah, that can happen with people. Gameplay of it's really good on tanks. Yeah, it can be annoying to have great mass, just unrivaled. Got me into military vehicles, and as I said, my last comment, I may work for Rheinmetall or something in the future. Generally, I don't know if I'm forgetting something. It's 4 AM right now, but it's the only game that I tolerate to play the worst possible graphics, 20 FPS. Ooh, that's rough. Hopefully you can get a slightly better rig. But 2 seconds, just gotta do this. No other game can make me play like that. I get you. Like there's a lot of games out there which there's some games nowadays where if they just don't work properly, I just don't play them. Like there's a game that I'm really looking forward to because it's basically like Wandering Village but in space, like you're on the back of a space whale. But I've been consistently trying to play the demo, which has been updated, and it just doesn't work. Like it just keeps breaking, and it's so sad. So sad to it. So hopefully they can fix that. But yeah, it's good to hear like why people play War Thunder or why people start playing War Thunder. Because at least for me it was kind of the opposite way around, right? I always had an interest in, military history from a young age because of family and also either being involved in the armed forces or being involved in conflict. And yeah, it's been quite enjoyable to see a part of that history, at least in a game form. Nowadays, it's a little bit more convoluted, but at the end of the day, still very fun. It's kind of weird seeing a lot of these vehicles in active war scenarios. Whoop. There we go. No, thanks for sharing your thoughts on it. That's very kind of you. So then we have Pigstick. I'm going on a rant, so sorry. So I've been grinding low to Japan. And about 3 to 5 minutes into games, all I hear is planes, planes, planes. I'm not talking about cast killing me, but it's just the sound. Sound. There could be 2 planes up, and I can't hear an enemy 20 yards away from me. Oh, I don't know where that guy went. It could be 20 yards away from me, but I can hear him absolutely not. I just get why Gaijin just can't put in a plane volume slider like your engine volume another player engine's volume. Also, and I'm on console, so I can't simply use a sound mod. That sucks. But that's it for my rant. Maybe someday Gaijin won't change the sound of things 35,000 times per year. Hopefully, I mean they reverted a bunch of their sound changes from the last update, which was kind of funny. The sound man once again, unfortunately, had to justify his job. But the thing, if you're having issues with that, I would screw around with the audio balances, because different things, like maybe increase like tank volume and then decrease some of the other ones, because then you'll be able to hear it, right? Like it should be a bit easier for you to hear. But yeah, I do agree. It is a problem. With many of the things, audio imbalance is one of the key issues with War Thunder. Has been for a long time. Hey Terminator, nice to see you. And it feels a lot like the matchmaking stuff, right? So because they continuously change it, it's very hard to keep track of what's going on. And you know, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and it's like being on like a Ferris wheel that's like falling off a mountain. Like you can give feedback on how it's rolling, but at the end of the day, it's just going to keep going, right? And there's nothing you can really do about it. So it feels like giving feedback on it is just completely random. Because I've actually seen it a lot in War Thunder, and it's actually happened to me a few times too, where what ends up happening is I'm chatting to somebody about the game, and they're bringing up stuff that was changed like a year ago, but they don't remember it being changed because they either weren't playing at that time, or they weren't, you know, involved, or just didn't see the update, which is another one as well, right? Because a lot of the time, you know, people don't always see stuff. So it's one of those which can be incredibly annoying to deal with an ever-changing landscape, and it can be hard. So yeah, it's just one of those. I just have to make sure to hit this guy. Nice. Just with the last round as well. Not bad. Cannons are now out of ammo. Oof. But yeah, it is something I wish they would put out sound tests, you know. It would be something that would be nice to see. But c'est la vie. Let's see what's going on. Then we have House of Schmidt. I apologize, I didn't expect to trigger a 15-minute reflection on the repetitive reality of a CC. I don't think you're an asshole. You do go into much more depth and provide more feedback, far more than most others. Were you surprised that Gaijin produced Enlisted rather than just making infantry a part of War Thunder? Do you think it was the right move? No, you don't have to apologize or anything. Like it's actually one of those things which I think is important to talk about a decent chunk, because it's something that never really gets brought up, you know, like the repetitive nature of things. I think it's a good idea to go through. It's not really a cleansing experience, but it's more of just making sure that everybody's on the same page, right? But no, I know. Put it like this: I've known you, Hausher Smith, for many years. Like when it comes to comment sections and also just discussing things. Like I see the name a lot and I see the comments a lot, right? There are certain people who are very uncharitable when it comes to what I say, and I know for a fact you aren't one of them. So don't worry, it's one of those things. But yeah, I think in general, like stuff like that. There was like a set of videos I did a long time ago, and it was basically one where I sat there for like 3 hours. I think it was like 2 or 3 hours, and there was like a thread, maybe on like Reddit or the forums, and it was a perfect mix of crap. Because it was basically everything that I'd ever been accused of over the years, and it was a great idea for me, maybe, you know, just basically for me to use that as a platform to talk about all the ideas that everybody was going through, right? Like the idea of, you know what? Oops. Jesus Christ. The idea of, you know, basically everything that, as I said, I've ever been accused of or moved around for, it was nice to put it all in one place. And the moment when I did that video, basically a lot of those things stopped happening, because if people needed answers to things, they could just go to that video, right? It works very well. And the people who would continuously make, you know, comments and things like that, they're not going to change. They're going to stay the same. So it's just kind of how it goes. I wasn't surprised at all that Enlisted is different, or a different game than War Thunder, because Enlisted is fundamentally a different experience than War Thunder. Unfortunately, nowadays, in Enlisted, they have gone the route of more of the vehicle stuff and just crazy stuff happening, which is fine. Like, if they wanted to do that, but it's not really something that I wanted in terms of the game, right? When they started Enlisted, the idea of a FPS that was made in the War Thunder engine based around the Second World War was just awesome. And it was pretty cool. You know, it was a little bit janky. They needed definitely help with the movement stuff, but they fixed that after about a year or two. And then the major issue was the matchmaking stuff, right? The matchmaking was something that they needed to sort out. Now, if they just plonked it in War Thunder, I feel like if you're an infantry member in War Thunder, you're just going to get blasted. Like, they're because of the third-person view of the vehicles, right? And because of how the maps are set up in War Thunder, because they are vastly different than Enlisted. Enlisted maps are a lot smaller, but also they have way more definition, right? So the way that War Thunder works, it wouldn't really work, you know, with that. But because of the third-person view, and also because of how a lot of the vehicles are set up in War Thunder, playing an infantry member would just be a death sentence. It wouldn't be very fun to play. And also at the same time, what would happen is you would just have people who would just be sat around corners and then, you know, try and blast people as they went. But you could just, you know, third person and annihilate them. With Enlisted, even without that part of the game, even without like the third person looks from tanks or from planes, you still annihilate hordes and hordes of people as you go around, and it just becomes a battery farm of just annihilating things. So I think the core of Enlisted when it started was incredibly positive, and it also added in a mechanic which was never kind of seen before in a multiplayer FPS. Nowadays, since it seems to be way more vehicle focused than it was previously, then yeah, maybe it might fit into War Thunder. And I don't think they ever will, like, kind of mesh it in. I think it's good as its own game. It just makes me very sad when I think about it. Because the game itself, as it started, was incredibly fun. You know, and as I said, it gave at least me an opportunity to play a game genre which I feel like was kind of lost to me, which was the multiplayer FPS genre, right? I hadn't played one in such a long time. And then it disappeared again because they just made it vehicle. And basically, it's, okay, when am I going to get exploded by a vehicle right now? You know? When am I going to get hammered by the next vehicle that spawns? When does that happen? And that's no fun. That's never going to be enjoyable. No matter how many times you try and do that or how many times it's available, it's just not going to be fun. So, and that was the problem with Enlisted. They listened to people who just wanted to play vehicles, and now the game is a ghost game. You know? It sucks. It's very sad. Hopefully, it changes around, but I don't think it will. I think it'll just keep going the way that it goes, because of the fact that the people who are left basically only play vehicles, and then also at the same time, it's a lot easier for them to add them in, because they already have the assets, and they just have to code it to the game. So yeah, kind of sucks. But I like them as individual experiences. I think as individual experiences it's good. And also as a positive note for Enlisted, they did actually recently say that they were testing +1 -1 matchmaking, which is something they should have done from the start. But here we are. Yeah, they had a very weird idea when it came to the historical matchmaking. Turns out PPSHs versus Mosens or versus Gavers or versus early Kai 98s is not very fun. And they finally figured it out after like 6 years. Hey Anti-Griefer, nice to see you. So we have Black Thunder. Hey Tech, how's your day going? Alright, I got a haircut. Ended up paying the phone bill, which is always a positive. All bills are paid for the month, so can't really complain. Feeling good, Got like most of the workout done, and I'll get the rest done later. Just looking forward to taking a few days off and enjoying the sun. It should be quite nice. Hey Hybrid, nice to see you too. I've been enjoying your content for a while. I feel like it's one of the more basic War Thunder creators out there, which has its perks, especially since unlike most other creator videos that tend to require me to watch the clips in full attention, I can listen to you as I finish my work, which is a nice way to keep up the news without being too distracted. Yeah, I basically make the videos how I would like to consume them. And to be honest, the way I like to consume things is kind of like in a podcast format. So, the gameplay's there, and obviously, I show stuff on the screen, like when it's the BR changes or when it's like, decorations or decals and stuff. But it's not necessary, right? If you don't need to look at it. One of the things that I remember when I was at university, and also a lot of people have talked about, when watching the videos, is if they have like night shifts or if they have like awkward work hours, or they just, have like a period of time where they're just like washing the dishes or doing some housework or doing things like that. It's nice just to kind of relax and put it on in the background and then listen to it. I know a ton of people who basically listen to my videos and watch my videos technically as like a background thing. Same with like the streams. Like I see this stuff as like a secondary thing. I feel like, needing attention all the time for that is the wrong way to do it. Because as the idea that I've enjoyed for the longest time is obviously chatting about the changes on what's happening. It doesn't have to be like gameplay or it doesn't have to be like super attentive. It can just be like, hey, this weird thing happened today in War Thunder, like the banana thing, right? And okay, we can use this as a topic to talk about this stuff and go through it. And I think that's important. I don't need to do like hypey, oh, look at this, oh, look at that, whoa, it's not really needed. I can just chill and, talk about the stuff. It's something that I've really enjoyed over the years, and I don't really intend on changing because it's what I enjoy doing. I could do like heavily edited, silly things. This year and last year, I've been offered by a decent amount of people who make like, shorts and also more heavily edited content. Like they've asked to basically like be like, hey, so pay us to edit videos, and then you get more views, yada yada yada. And every time this happens, like every time I get approached by one of these, or I get approached by like a company who like does these things, I just think about like, I don't know, I kind of like doing all this stuff myself, right? I don't really want to move around and make it more of a crazy official thing. Then it kind of loses, the point for me. What do you think about the MiG-23ML as of right now? I think it's in a fine place, but the problem is the vehicles that are overpowered around it. The ML is okay where it is. It got nerfed twice, but it's still fine. The issue is they need to move around specific vehicles at 11.712. Pretty much just wanted to say hi, but a weird, silly, funny question. What do you think of War Thunder adding World War I or even pre-1914 aviation and other war machines? We had naval vehicles that are essentially 1910, and I've been heavily looking forward to see if we'll ever get a bunch of those French pre-dreadnoughts, King Biang warships, or Japanese proto Jean-Nicole Matsushima class. They're pretty wild vehicles. I feel like we can have ones for aviation and ground too. And how do you think they'll be implemented in the tech tree? I myself think it should be a reverse tech tree, where your RP research is backwards towards BR 0.13 to 0.37. A reverse. Not sure about reversing, but yeah, you do hit on one of the key issues with doing that, right? When will the next event start? No idea. No idea. Probably in a few weeks. So when new players come to the game, you don't want them playing those things because they're incredibly weak to play, right? Like that's the major problem. So you have to add it in a way where it doesn't affect the new players, but people get access to it. So you either do this through like an expansion, right? Like a DLC, where you add like a bunch of like single missions, dynamic campaigns. You can get these vehicles. You can either use them in standard matchmaking, or you can use them in custom battles. You know, that's something. So you know that's a possibility. You could just add them in at the start of the game, so you give like the initial period a pretty rough time for people, or you do them as like special events. And this is one that I'm more interested in. So let's go through the different time periods. Number 1, World War I aviation slash interwar aviation. Expanding on that. All right, let's do it. You know, there isn't many First World War games which actually do that in a good way. There's obviously Rise of Flight, but you know I don't even know if that's still around. But I think Gaijin has an opportunity to do a lot of fun with that. As I said, do a bunch of single missions, dynamic missions, you know, and kind of grind out these vehicles like that. I think that would be very fun. Is the Term 3 any good? Yes, it's very good. It's very good. If you want to have a look at my opinion on it, I did a video on it during the sale, which was in May. So, with World War I vehicles, specifically aviation, I think they could just be added. Obviously, we have the World War I naval stuff and pre-World War I. I'll be fine with them adding, you know, even earlier stuff than that. I think there's actually quite a lot of them that are really cool and really interesting. So yeah, I would be all for that. Personally, I think that would be good. But I would want to World War I tanks. No way. I'm not interested at all. They would be horrific to play. What they should do with those, and maybe even the naval stuff, is they should do them as events. So one of the events I've talked about in the past that I think Gaijin should celebrate is the first ever tank battle, right? So the first ever tank battle obviously took place in the First World War, and it was when I believe one of the Marks, probably the Mark 7 or the 6, it faced off against an A7V, right? And I'll just find it for you, because I've done a video on it in the past, but I always forget its damn name. It's not like when tanks were first used. Obviously, that was in 1916. Here we go. So there was the battle at the town of Villers-Bretonneux, right? And it was the first tank-on-tank battle in history. Now, this was in 1918, and it was the A7V, which was, of course, the German tank, and it was against the Mark IV mail tanks, which were from Britain. So this was the first time in active combat that a tank fought a tank, right? Hey, Anthony, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. So for me, I would love to see an event around that in War Thunder. It happened in, as I said, 1918. So they missed an opportunity with doing it on the 100-year anniversary. But they could just do a game mode where it's the A7V, maybe a little bit arcadey, and then also the Mark IV. And what you need to do is you need to play or win X amount of battles with each of the vehicles, and you get to keep them. Right? And what that would mean is you would have people who would play the mode, they would get access to the vehicles, but you wouldn't be able to use them in standard matchmaking. Instead, you would have them as kind of hangar decorations. And this is something I've talked about quite a lot. Expanding the hangar, adding more stuff to it, whether it's like a set of medals to kind of show what events you've done in the past, whether it's like squadron rewards or whatever, right? That, to me, would be fun. And you could even do it for vehicles. So these are kind of like pieces that you have in the hangar. And you can put them around in places, or at the same time, you could have it so they're kind of sat there, and you can... You could have them kind of sat there, and what they end up doing is you can take them into custom battles or single missions or dynamic campaigns. And you could have like whole campaigns based around them. For me, that would be fun. But the other part, like aviation and naval, yeah, go crazy. Like, why not? Go absolutely nuts. Go bongos. But yeah, the tank one I think should be limited, because just like a lot of the submarine stuff and things like that, they seem very poor, right? If I really have to buy, should I get the SU-25K or the 39? The K. Definitely the K. The 39 is in a much rougher place. Hey, Rainy, nice to see you. Wouldn't a walkable hangar be pretty cool to have one where you can show your stuff off? Exactly, Rainy. And they even did that like a little bit ago, right? The hangar in War Thunder and the profile in War Thunder is the part of the game which is ripe for expansion. And it's also the bit that you see the most. Right? So I just don't know why it hasn't been expanded upon. So then we have OB. I made it on console. You can't lock on with AGM helicopters and drones, but I think it's just me. Did you... Can you change controls on console? I know you can plug in a mouse and keyboard, but like... are you able to... Are you able to change stuff like that? It might be either a weird control combination, or maybe you removed a control. But yeah, I don't know how that works. I really need to give or have a look at the console stuff. I sat down a while ago with the console side of things and just kind of went through that. You can debind stuff. All right, well, might want to bind whatever that one is. Obviously, that's not great. Not entirely enjoyable, that. Because that doesn't sound like a bug, that just sounds like something got debound, you know? Which happens a lot when it comes to War Thunder, right? Like, for me, like, with the last update, I had to move around some of my controls because of additional controls they added in, like the weapon selector and other things like that, so yeah. You have to be a bit careful with those things. Oh dear. It's one of those that happens so much as well. Like just straight up, oh, well, looks like we have a new update and everything's broken again. But yeah. Oh, I should take this opportunity. Always back up your controls. Get a USB stick or something like that. Back up your controls onto it, because every so often, I have no idea why, but this has happened for years in War Thunder, is there will just be people who update the game and their controls just disappear. So you should back up your controls like every month or so, maybe every few months, maybe after every update, because obviously they change. But yeah, it's so annoying when that happens. I have no idea what causes it. It's happened forever. It sucks. And it's such a weird bug as well. And technically also just completely game breaking. Because it means that your setup just doesn't work anymore. It was as if like if you play like an MMORPG and you just log in and like all your keybinds are just broken, you know? I wish there were more 3D skins you could buy like in all the tanks. I'm sure there will be in the future. You know, obviously that's a growth area, so because they don't have a lot of them. Maybe even have them as part of events and stuff. So then we have Insane Robert. Hello, Tech. I understand when you're saying you're getting tired of people promoting and pushing the same topics in War Thunder. I can see the exact same trend on the forums as well. Recently, I saw a resurgence of vehicles with heavy machine guns, especially Italian and French ones, on the forums, which it may sound great, but these machine guns are worse than the US 50 cal in terms of penetration and sustained fire. Low velocity and penetration, and you usually see just one MG and a tank head mounting, with poor gun traverse and questionable survivability mobility. I don't see these vehicles doing well in War Thunder, since they'll perform pretty poorly against others. But in a game like Enlisted, these could work since you have infantry to shoot at with your MG and penetration becomes less of an issue. Yeah, in Enlisted it could work fine. And if anything, that's the type of vehicle they should have added to Enlisted instead of the Tiger 2H. Good evening, Penguin Red. Like, I would be fine with stuff like the Panzer 1 and Enlisted, right? Panzer 1 and Panzer 2, maybe at a push, a Panzer 3 with like the long 50. You know, they should have just kept to those, but they didn't. Instead, they just kept going more and more crazy. I think Enlisted was the best when you had the start of it. If you remove some of the bombers like the SP2M and the A20, you had a fantastic setup. Fantastic setup. But no, they decided that IS-2s were needed, and they decided that T-34-85s were needed, and Panthers were needed, and Tiger 1s and Tiger 2s were needed, and Pershings and Ho-Rees and all that. But yeah, in War Thunder, it don't make a lot of sense. I think it's important, right? So there's a lot of people who push stuff because they just want to see it because it exists in real life, right? They think because it exists, it should be in game. That happens so much, right? A lot of the forums are straight up like full of that. You have a look at the suggestions passed to the devs, just the same thing. This thing exists. War Thunder puts in stuff that exists. It should be in the game. There isn't really a thought towards like balance or anything like that, and that's what we see a lot when it comes to the past the devs a lot too. I remember there was a time where it felt like every past the devs, it was like, hey, have a random 1930s Italian bomber where its engines didn't work, it was super slow, it had pretty much no armament, and also it would overheat like crazy and carry like 400 kilos of bombs, right? Like there was like a 6-month period where I was like, hey, have an Italian bomber from the 1930s, or you know, have this used to happen a lot in the past the devs too. Have random Soviet jet from the period of like 1945 to 1955, which is either an interceptor with no guns or one gun and terrible missiles, or just a failed prototype, which if Britain hadn't bailed them out by giving them, the actual proper jet engine, would have continued to be the Soviets for a long time. And that happened for like a year, 2 years, in the past of the devs. And there's nothing wrong with it because, they all existed, they're all ready to go, all of that stuff. Oh, here we go again. But it was just one of those things which was so funny to watch, because of that fact. So yeah, I feel like there is a ton of stuff that they can add. Like whenever people ask me, like, oh, well, what about, jet interceptor aircraft? Have you played like the LA-200? Have you played the Lightning? Which is one of the better ones. It's a little bit different than what you may see, right? And those lower tier ones, the one, the one that I have always enjoyed, when it comes to those, is some of the British armored cars, because a lot of the British armored cars, like we have the Daimler, right? Like the Daimler was added, and the Daimler has the 2-pounder, so it's fine, right? But you also have the Staghound with the 50 cals, which is an AA. But also there is a bunch of other ones like the Humber, if you don't know what the Humber is. And there is a Humber with like a Besser machine gun, which is like it's like a 14 millimeter or like a weird millimeter, and it's just awful. It has no penetration, and it would be absolutely terrible in the game. But there's been so many people trying to push for these vehicles for the longest time, and it just reminds me of stuff like the Chabba, where the Chabba has 34 millimeters of pen, and this has terrible pen compared to most things. And, you know, these guns would have way worse than that, and they would have the same fire rate, and they would just be terrible. You'd play them like 3 or 4 times, and then just forget that they exist. But once again, it's the whole idea of, well, it existed in real life, it should be in the game, right? And it's just not a very good one. It's a weak reason. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see. So we have the only Lent. Let's have a look. Hey TEC, this week is something else. Elden Ring getting a DLC, mobile games. I was playing as a new event, and War Thunder getting a major update. WoWie, overwhelming, that's for sure, and then mix it up with life responsibilities. Gonna slowly going through them over the next weeks. Yeah, it's kind of nuts, right? And then also at the same time, like if you follow Final Fantasy, they also have a big expansion going. Then the Steam sales, then the War Thunder sales. There's a lot of stuff, you know. Hey Moxie, nice to see you. That aside, War Thunder top tier France, you know, I'm pretty glad France doesn't have any 10-0s to 11-3 ground tanks. I get to play top tier quick enough for me to realize how garbo the gameplay is. Yep, me no think, me play the heat bonk for 20 games cause no premium account. Me get fully spaded, top tier tank, get wanged by everything, things good time. Yeah, thanks as always and have a good one. As always, hopefully they can continue to reduce the grind for those things. But I agree, there is a bit of a problem with a lot of those. Not entirely enjoyable to go through a lot of those and actually play through them. And that's been one of the problems for a long time. It's the simple fact that a lot of those vehicles take like 30-40% spaded to even become alive. I'm actually finding it happening with aviation a lot. So specifically with like the F-86 F2, MiG-21 BIS, and then also the Jaguar that I've been playing. Once I get them to like 40%, 50% mods, they're alright. You know, you can get through them. But that time of getting to that is just hell. It's absolute hell. It's a little bit easier with the GL1, but the other ones, it was just hell. And once you get past that, it's like the promised land. And I'm kind of done with War Thunder vehicles being like that, where it's like the rub and the smooth. You have to take so many hits in order just to be kind of combat effective. It just sucks. I wish it was different. I really do. Alright, there we go. Ooh. But yeah. Tale as old as time. Alright, here we go. So we have Charlie Harris. You shouldn't use your history and experience to base your opinion on how people react in War Thunder. Because before you know, eventually, you'll probably think that we're all idiots and saying the same things over and over, which I can agree will get annoying, but I don't think that's an excuse to use your history and experience to be sure opinion on how people in War Thunder react. I'm just saying. And also, if historical matchmaking did come in, I would imagine you would be completely fuming, or would just accept it for what it is. And like I said before, I'll say it again, you don't know these things until you try it. If historical matchmaking was added to the game, I would just stop playing the game. I would install it. There are a few uninstall it, sorry. And I'd just go play other stuff. Simple as. The idea of historical matchmaking is untenable. It makes no sense and will never make sense. So yeah. They've also tried it in the past. And that's because I base stuff on history and experience, and I remember being there when they tried it, and it didn't work, right? If we don't base stuff on history and experience, and also feeling at the end of the day, all you're left with is feeling, right? And that is a problem. And I'll explain to you why. So, if I'm trying to sell an idea to somebody, you can base it off personality, you can base it off imagination, you can base it off feeling, you can base it off belief. But there's a problem there. Out of all of those things, there's nothing concrete. And it's all basically about the individual and how they deal with the situation that's in front of them. So what you have to do is you have to be incredibly charismatic to get across your point without statistics and without anything, and just based on you think it's the correct thing to do, and if you believe it's the correct thing to do, therefore it is the correct thing to do. That is a very, very hard thing to do, especially in the business world. There are some people who can do it. They're usually con artists, right? Because they're very charismatic and they can just get away with just doing ridiculous stuff. But most people actually need backup to their ideas. They need some kind of backing, whether it's research, whether it's historical precedent, whether it's experience, whatever it is. You need something to back it up, right? So for me, when I look at all of that extra part of it, right? When I look at the history, when I look at the experience, when I look at all the stuff that I've researched into, when it comes to game design, and when it comes to even just the historical side of it, it makes absolutely no sense. So in order for me to forget about all of that, and then just base it on feeling, or base it on belief, or base it on some weird notion of what is correct in terms of this, cannot work. Because I wouldn't be able to have the confidence, I wouldn't be able to have the belief, because everything is against it. So at that point, you're just dealing with something which is more kind of not a demagogue. It's more of you'd have to have like a fanatical belief in it, right? Because you have to basically throw everything out in the window. Now, for me, I don't work like that, right? And also at the same time, usually people who run businesses or at high-end decision-making, they also don't run with that. Because the risk of doing stuff like that is incredibly high. Because if you are basing stuff around that, if you're basing stuff on future predictions, right? And not stuff which you already know and what is already working, you better have a very large set of balls. And it's something that Gaijin did 15 years ago, right? With the game that they have now, and it worked very well. They put in a metric ton of time, metric ton of effort, and it works, right? But it took them this long to get there, right? And there's nobody else who has the resources or the time or any of that to be able to compete with them, because they were the ones who had the vision to do it. Now, if you have a product that you have nursed and created for 10, 15 years, with a business that has been around for 20, 25, 30 years, and somebody comes to you with an idea that is not fully there, cannot be shown either in historical precedent, statistical precedent, or even just factual precedent, and has a lot of negatives to it, but they are charismatic about the thing, even after all of those things, right, it's not going to get done. Because you are asking them to risk 15 years. You are asking them to risk something that they've worked on for over a decade for an idea. And not basing it on reality, and instead basing it on prediction. Now, the only time decisions like that happen, where it is based on prediction instead of reality, only prediction, so no basis at all, is when you have a failing idea and you have to throw the baby out of the bathwater to try and save it. War Thunder isn't that. It doesn't need to be saved. It's doing very well. Right? And there would be many other things that you would have to do in order to do that. Take anything in life, right? Let's say you're going to university, right? You decide you want to get a degree. For me, when I went to university, or planning to go to university, I should say, the first thing I looked into was the job market of the areas where I was thinking of going to live, also what I was good at when it came to school, and what crossed in that area, and also what were growing businesses at the time. Because I knew I would be at university for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it was, and by the time that I left the university, I'd be in a position to be able to enter those businesses, right? So I took all of that into account when making that decision. And I'm just an individual person. Imagine if you're a company with many different strings pulling many different ways. So it's not that you have to convince me about what is right or what is wrong. You have to come up with a pitch for a company that has been around for decades, which has made millions upon millions of dollars in revenue, doing the complete opposite of what you are asking. That is why you have to at least have some kind of level which is based on experience and history, and not futures. If you want to just base stuff on futures, you can go gamble in the stock market on medical brands. You can go and do what hedge funders do, and then wonder why a bunch of them aren't very successful on an individual basis. Right? You can go do that if you want. But when it comes to ideas in a private business, and when it comes to ideas of trying to push forward certain, ideas to get into it, which are completely counter to what has made something successful, you better have a hell of a pitch. And so far, the pitch is, that's how it was in real life. That's how it should be. And as we've said many times with video games, that can't work. That's pretty much it. Just take anything that you do in life, right? Anything. Whether it's like getting a job, buying a house, doing education. And start basing it on just faith. Instead of basing it on history or experience or anything like that. Don't listen to any industry professional about anything and just do something the way that you think is right to do. Don't use a plumber. Don't use an electrician. Don't use a handyman. Don't use like a builder. Don't use a doctor. Don't use a dentist, because all of theirs are based on history and experience. Just do it all by yourself by faith and see what happens. There's a reason our society is not set up like that, and hasn't been for an extremely long time. Right, so that's the last question, or last point, I suppose. If you guys have any other thoughts or questions, this would be now the time to go in. Remember, Stalker Matchmaking is putting Panzer IVs against Super Pershings. Well, once again, the SU-27 SM is a early 2000s vehicle. So is the J11. The F-15C is what, an 80s vehicle? The whole of the Swedish tech tree. There's plenty of examples. It makes no sense. But yeah, do any of you guys have any questions, comments, or anything before we wrap up this one? So we can move forward and get some stuff done. Well, even from the belief or feeling part, like you could easily counter it too, but it's a very silly idea to just remove those factors. Like, it's crazy. With how top tier air is right now, do you think it's right to have aircraft with no AIHs fighting aircraft with AIHs? No, not particularly. Also, I don't think a lot of that balances is very good right now. But even then, like, the same problem existed with the semi-actives, but now it's just even worse, right? But no, I think hopefully in a few weeks or a month, they can actually sort out some BRs now that we have like air and ground BR differences. It should mean that they can push stuff up, which will be nice. But the main thing this calls for, which is the same thing that we've talked about for a few years, is a simple solution. And that solution is BR by modification. So now that we have different BRs based on game mode, now that's the next part. That's the next fight that will eventually, hopefully, happen. Because that one's huge. That's a massive, massive one that needs to be sorted out. So hopefully it happens. But who knows? Who knows indeed. Right, let's wrap up the tech talk. We'll continue streaming, but I think, we got some specials done. We got our dailies done. We can focus on grinding out the Jaguar now. Oh! And I got a banana. There you go. It's banana time, baby. We randomly... Now I just need the bunch. And then we're good to go. Right. Look after yourselves. Have a good time. Bye-bye.